Welcome to Parent, Parenting Unfiltered, with Jennifer Morrison, founder of Parent to Parent. This is a space where real conversations about parenting happen. Jennifer sits down with mum, dad, and carers to share their stories, the wins, the worries, and the moments that remind us we're not in this alone. With honesty, empathy, and a focus on what really matters, these conversations strip away the pressure and get to the heart of parenting. Because parenting isn't perfect, it's real. And here, it's unfiltered.
Welcome to another Parent Connect podcast. And today I am going to be talking to an amazing lady who I have managed to connect to on LinkedIn, which is great. And her name is Natalie Horseman. And Natalie is a storyteller, a nurse, an author, and a founder of Horseman Publishing. She brings creative, emotion, and experience to readers of all ages. Natalie writes adventures and hard-hearted children's books like the Bumpy Pumpkin. What a great name for a book. And the Goat on the Go series, and we're going to talk about this particular special goat that sparks imagination while weaving important lessons in kindness, resilience, curiosity, and growing through life's ups and downs. And Natalie's work spans from playful stories to young readers to broader family resources and emotional support tools. And she does this with a focus on clarity and empowerment, values that resonate deeply with the work we explore here. So today we're going to talk about how stories help children make sense of big emotions, how parents can use the narrative and language to foster emotional clarity, and why clarity matters more than rescue or over-explaining in both family relationships and co-parenting dynamics. Natalie, I am glad you are here.
Oh, thank you. I am so excited to be here. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So let's start. Your children's books are full of adventure and life lessons. How does storytelling help children make sense of complex feelings in a way that simply talking doesn't?
It gives them visual cues. It gives them a way to see emotion other than just someone saying, you're angry, you're sad. What does that mean to a little kid? You need more than just the words. So being able to relate to a character that maybe has a red face because they're angry, or maybe they're showing a frowny face because they're sad. Kids may not necessarily know those words, but they know what that feeling is like, that they know that something is impacting them that makes them feel down. And so with storytelling, we can give kids and really readers of all ages characters that they can relate to on various different levels. Whether a kid can actually read the words and understand them, or just look at the pictures and have a image resonate with them that they go, gosh, I know what that feels like. I've felt that. I've been frustrated or disappointed, or my cheeks get red when I get angry. And so having these relatable characters, whether they're pumpkins or goats or people or whatever, it gives them another outlet, another way to translate their own feelings and emotions other than just using words.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to know where this started. What made you go down this road? Fill us in a little bit about the background about your family dynamic so that we can understand where Bumpy Pumpkin came from and where your little precious goat came from.
Yes. So I have loved storybooks since I was a little kid. I was the one that was always at the library with my canvas bag full of books. I had my little library card, and I came from a family with my mom, who was a single mom at the time. That's where we spent a lot of my summer days. And when I would travel to my aunt and my grandmother's, that's what we did, is we got storybooks. And I have the best memories of story time with these wonderful women in my life. And not only would we do story times, but they would give me books for all holidays, my birthday, and they would always sign them and put a little note in them. And I still have those storybooks to these days. So they are well over 40 years old. And I just have the most joyful, warmest, heartfelt memories of this time with my family, whether it was them reading to me or when I got to read or when I started to read to my younger sister, who I am 7 years older. So these are just all wonderful connection points in my childhood. Just kept putting it off and putting it off. And so finally one day I said, I'm ready. I'm over myself. If I'm going to do it, just sit down, write this book. And I am one that loves the funky pumpkins. I love the pumpkins that are different. And I had always been buying those. And I was looking at a Bumpy Pumpkin one time and I thought, this is so relatable on so many levels. You've got a lot of times these different pumpkins are left behind in the patch. I think all of us can connect with that idea and that story of just self-doubt or being self-conscious. And the name Bumpy Pumpkin came to me, and it was fun to say. It's a bit of a tongue twister
It is a
sometimes.
bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah. And I just was like, just write it. See what happens. Nothing bad is going to happen by just writing it. And little did I know that writing that book was going to kick off this amazing journey and love for writing that I really did not know was locked deep down inside of me. So yeah, it's been truly amazing. But my main goal is to write books that create some type of connection for someone. Even if it's just one child, one parent, if they have that memorable moment, then I've done my job. So.
Absolutely. And, a lot of people or a lot of parents over the generations have liked to sit with children and read before bed. That sort of thing. Grandmas and granddads do it. So it's something we all tend to naturally navigate towards when we've got a little person in our space, I think. And they do love it, even if they flick 5 pages ahead and not really listening, that's okay.
Yeah.
You're parenting children, but in a slightly different way. Do you want to share a little bit about that and how maybe this has also helped the process of what you're doing now?
Yes. And so with all the books, they all have a subtle message. I did not want the books to be preachy. I wanted it to be relatable and kids to see themselves even in a character that was a goat. And so my hope with each book and each goal is to provide lessons that kids can relate to, that parents can appreciate, and also generate some type of discussion afterwards of, do you know what it's like to feel this certain emotion that the pumpkin is feeling, or see this event that Scout is having. Let's talk about it. Have you experienced that? And it's an interesting way to generate those conversations and parenting in a different way than it is just sitting and what I think a lot of us growing up may have experienced was just dictating. It was because I said so. This is why you do it. And storybooks can offer us another way of having conversations and seeing the world through a very colorful lens that is full of adventure, but also has those lessons in it that are so important for that psychological, mental, emotional development of kids. And especially the stories that resonate with children and that they want to keep coming back to. There's something in it that they are really connected to. And those kind of moments are just amazing. And I think it's so important that we pay attention to those and latch onto them and really foster and nurture that, because it's just another way to share messages that can be very creative and fun for children versus just sitting and being told what to do, so to speak, or not to do.
Just going back to that thing about going back to those books, how kids can go back to those books. What do you think the difference is between helping name an emotion and helping a child to understand it? Why does that distinction really matter?
Kids have to figure it out for themselves. They have to recognize it at whatever level that may be. And again, it may just be a recognition of a facial expression or that a color translates to something or the body language. And so they have to make the connection for themselves. And you could put 5, 6-year-olds in a room, have them each read the same story, and they're going to each take something away from it. And it's whatever visually stimulates them that they connect to, or whatever words or even their own emotion that they may feel. Maybe it makes them giggle. Maybe it makes them happy. Maybe it reminds them of their parents or their siblings. And so it's amazing. There's so many ways kids can connect with a book, and each child will be different in that aspect of what they were drawn to and what they pay attention to and what keeps them coming back to that same story.
Because I think I can remember having favourite books that I would go back to. And I suppose I'm showing my age here, but I used to love the famous, because there was a whole series of those. And they used to
Yes.
do all these great adventures and go off in spaces. And books are a great space to go into as well and learn to go into, because they can be a retreat as
Yeah.
well as a fun thing. They can be a retreat to get away
Yes.
from the world for a little while and be able to come and you just go into yourself and feel safe. So let's talk about the distinction about over explaining and all that sort of thing. In your experience, where do parents tend to over explain or over interpret children's behavior? And how can they shift that to a clearer and more supportive sort of role?
Yes, I think sometimes less is more, especially when we're
Yeah.
explaining something. Depending on the scenario and the tone of the event or what's going on, children can shut down right away just based on the tone of the adult that's talking with them. And so it's something as adults we need to pay attention to, because at that point, the kid is no longer receptive to whatever we're trying to explain, even if it's for their safety or for what's best for them. And so trying to figure out with that specific child, what is a way to connect with them. And again, I think what's hard too for adults and for parents who even have several children, each child is so different and each child will interpret and receive information. And so it's having an understanding, okay, maybe I'm trying to explain something this way, and you can just tell it is not connecting. Either the child is getting defensive or not paying attention or not even engaged. So then we need to change our tactic. And so if we're just doing words, maybe it is we pull out a book that can then help either calm the situation, reframe it, or just create a better moment for connection that will then lead to a good opportunity to have a conversation. But sometimes more words is not best. It just gets muddled for a child. And so
Yeah.
taking a step back and saying, okay, how can we simplify this? And then I think also asking the child, what did they understand? And how do they interpret the scenario? Because a lot of times as adults, we can project on the children and we can think that we know exactly what they're going through or that they should be thinking something or doing something. And until we ask, we don't really quite know what's going on in their little head and the best way to connect with them and explain things. It's tricky though. It's definitely tricky.
It sounds good in theory. Yeah.
Yes,
But
it's hard. Yeah.
And of course, in the moment too, emotions start to rise and
Yeah.
the clarity can get a bit foggy, can't it? Oh, look, I'm
And
sure we've all been there.
And I think too, as adults, giving ourselves grace.
Yeah.
We're not going to get it right every time. And it's okay to circle back. Let's say we're trying to have a conversation and it is just not happening and it has just been a disaster. Take a breather, go do something else, and then come back and reapproach it. That's the great thing about kids is you can always come back to it and just reframe the conversation or situation or have other resources at your fingertips. But yeah, I think parents and adults were so hard on ourselves and it's hard to get it right. And so it's paying attention to the reaction you're getting from the child. If it's not sitting right with you or it's not productive, then you pause, you pivot, you take a breath, you come back to it later. But that phrase, just beating that horse over and over again, it's not going to get anywhere. So I think that's where parents can say, okay, I'm frustrated. The child's possibly frustrated. Let's just take a breather. We'll come back to it. But it's hard, especially in a moment or when it's an event that warrants a strong safety concern or something like that. Not every scenario is the same.
No. And as you said, if you've got other children, not every child's the same. So you really do have to read the room a lot more. And that's something I'm really noticing with my parenting coaching, that parents today are so emotionally overwhelmed because they're carrying everybody's emotions.
Yeah.
And I mean everybody's and including their own. And I think this is a good moment to reflect that you don't actually have to do that. You don't have to carry everyone's emotions. You can let them have them. Your child's allowed to feel a little bit disappointed at times or a little bit sad or that you haven't measured up, but they're not going to give you a hard time around that. They just sometimes need to feel it, because if we don't do that, we're not responsibly giving them the opportunity to learn what that feels like. and to
Right.
also learn their emotions. How do they deal with them?
You're so right. We can't fix it all, and we're not meant to fix it all.
No.
One way of growing, both for children and adults, is through experience. And you have to go through it to experience it, to see what it's like to be from beginning, middle, and end. And the only way kids can do that is if they experience it themselves. And so if we're always trying to fix or mitigate or not let them have a potentially disappointing experience or be frustrated, they don't know how to handle those emotions. One, they don't recognize what it is. So they start to feel it internally and they don't know what it means. And so it can come out in various ways because they just don't know how to channel whatever they're feeling or how to express it. Or they don't know it translates to, I am disappointed because, I am angry because, I am sad because, and let's talk about what this means, what we can do about it. But if we jump in to fix it, it can be stunting in a way that then they don't know how to handle those big emotions that, stick with us our entire lives.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
there's a big talk about this soft parenting, and there are different levels of that, and that's
Yes.
another
Yeah.
story. But this whole idea of rescuing, if we go down that road as parents, we actually make our children helpless. They are unable to do all of these things that we're talking about, and they don't grow up into adults who can handle things. And they're the ones that blame, throw it back at other people, and just aren't able to function as well as we want them to. So, any parent listening now, please understand rescuing is okay if it's going to create death or injury or
Right.
things like that. But if it's just normal everyday stuff where they're disappointed because you've changed your mind, you're not going to the beach, it's okay. It's
Yes.
okay.
It's okay.
It's
Yes.
okay.
And I think to your point, talking about if the event changed or there's disappointment, I think also that teaches kids not only what disappointment is, sadness, anger, but also how to pivot, how to
Yes.
take a potentially frustrating situation and turn it into something good or something more memorable or more enjoyable. And that is a skill that takes some time to learn, even as adults, but being able to reframe your thinking in the scenario and then be able to look at it from maybe a more positive or a productive, constructive way, it takes skill and it takes practice, and the only way you get to that is if you're allowed to go through those emotions and feelings, on your own.
Yeah. And I think that along that very same line, if you can't do those sorts of things again, you get to that space with the child where they just stick their heels in and just have a tantrum or whatever it is because they don't know how to do that. They get
Mhm.
stuck in that space and they don't know how to get out of it. And I've
Mhm.
seen that with my own grandson where he just doesn't know how to get out of that space because he hasn't learned how to do it.
Mhm.
So now we do breathing exercises and we figured it out.
Yes.
That's how we do it
Yes.
because he's 9 and it's been 9 years worth of doing that. And it just is something that we do now and it works really well. So we do have to let our kids feel the stuff that they're allowed to feel.
Yeah.
Stopping from all of that is such a negative. And as I said before, your kid becomes helpless. Everybody's got to do it for them. All right. So let's just go on a slightly little different tangent.
Yeah.
When co-parenting or communicating through challenges, stories and metaphors often help. How can parents use these books to structure meaning rather than to simply manage the emotions?
What is very interesting about any kind of storybook, there's always some relatable character and a way to spin it in a way that relates to your own family, your own circumstance, your own life events. And it's a way to bridge that conversation and say, let's read the Bumpy Pumpkin. We're reading through it and take, let's say, an image on the book or emotion or a word, and you can tie it into what, is currently going on in your family. And it can be a segue into a conversation. And so that conversation starts in a very safe place, a very kind of fun, warm space within a storybook. And so there's so many ways to use books again to help drive conversations and lessons and things that are impactful on a parenting level. And I think sometimes we need to make sure we don't see books as just a book, just words.
Yes.
There's so
No.
much more to them that they can be used as tools and resources right at our fingertips to help in so many different situations and scenarios.
Yeah. And I think one of the loveliest skills we can give our child is to learn to read and to love books.
Mhm.
I think it's just an amazing thing. You know, a lot of
Yeah.
children, some children are just not booky, but I
Mhm.
think if in
Yeah.
there we can encourage at least a little bit of booky, that's a good
Yes.
thing for them. I know that's not a
is.
word. Bookie's not a word, but you know what I love it.
Yes. And I think too, even if it's not a child doesn't necessarily love a story time or wants to read books, but creating that space of just quiet time or time to sit and do something else that kind of gets them out of the hustle and bustle of the day and gives them an opportunity to just settle down, let the stimulation of the day, you know, settle. And that's just as important. And so it could be sitting with books, looking through books, coloring what you see in the books. There's a lot that you can do with them that can really provide that kind of calm space that, kids, heck, adults needed. I would love a story time in the middle of a work day
Yeah.
just to decompress. And that's just as important in kids. It just looks a little different.
Yeah. And if we don't give them the opportunity, they don't learn that one either, do they, Natalie?
Correct. Yeah. That those coping mechanisms, that kind of self soothing and just finding resources and ways to, you know, comfort ourselves during, let's say, the day or hectic moments. There's a lot of tools and resources, but if you don't experience that, you don't know that they're there to tap into.
Yeah. And even if you see them, you have no idea what you do with them. So it all leads into the other, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
books often include themes like friendship, curiosity, and self discovery. How do stories help build the internal clarity that kids need, not just the emotional regulation, but understanding themselves and others? So your stories do this, and I'd like to know how that kind of works.
Yeah, yeah. So with the stories, I wanted to provide connection points. So knowing again that each child will read the book and take something completely different. So I wanted to have different kind of themes and those points, like you mentioned. And so friendship is one of them. And all of my books, the friends all look different. So whether it's a different looking goat or it's another animal or it's a different looking pumpkin, to highlight, hey, our friends all look different. We're all not the same. And so we're bigger and taller and we look different. So that is one connection point. And then the other is just curiosity. Ask them questions. I think kids, it's so important to know that it's okay to ask questions and to be curious and ask those whys, even though it can be very aggravating sometimes. But why is it this? Or what does that look like? Or what does that mean? And then providing those opportunities for those questions and then providing answers. And so there's a lot of questions in my book. So where Scout the goat is just curious. What's going on? What is this? What's beyond? And I think it helps to teach kids too to expand their thinking. It's not just our little bubble right here. What's outside of our little bubble? Or what happens if we go right instead of left? And so providing a safe space to explore those ideas and that imagination and really foster it and have that point of, yeah, ooh, I understand what this is, or I'm curious, or let me go outside and let me see what the area looks like over there, or if we do something different. And so it's just a cool way to engage kids in various different ways and levels.
Yeah. And kids are very naturally curious anyway. And the why can get a bit annoying, but it's important that we allow them to go there. Shutting them
Mhm.
down is not a good option. I'm just saying that because that was my experience. Go, go
Yes,
in.
exactly. Because
Go
they
in.
said so. That was
I've
that
got
was the
kids.
response I ever always got. Yes.
Yeah, because I
Yes.
said so. Close that door.
Yeah.
Okay, so how can adults model emotional clarity for children, not just through the words, but through the way they hold those boundaries and decisions?
I think we lead by example, and that is really hard because, like you mentioned, adults, parents, we are carrying the weight of the world and not only trying to take care of ourselves, our jobs, our families, but also these little ones who are looking to us for safety and guidance. And I think it's so important for, again, adults to give themselves grace and be patient with themselves, and then also provide these opportunities for kids to explore, connect, expand their imagination. You were talking about the kids that always ask why. Yes, it can be super aggravating, but the great thing is it means they're thinking, right? They're curious. They want to know. Their mind is just going. What a cool thing that a kid is just sitting there wondering all these wonderful things. And as parents, there's many different ways that we can help foster that. One of that is with books, and that help show them these different worlds that they can escape to and imagine it and use their imagination. And I think too, it's just, again, this wonderful opportunity to connect and bring things together in a way that is just different than just regular conversation or a parent dictating to a child what they need to do. It just provides different opportunities to explain things that are going on in the world with emotions and people and things. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned that magic word curiosity, and children have that because the world is a huge, amazing, wonderful place. They hadn't been here before, and they're seeing it from a completely different space, which is, my God, what's out there? What is this? The curiosity. And I feel saddened in a sense that curiosity gets closed down as we grow, and
Yeah.
we stop going into that curiosity space and we lose it. I'm learning to go back into that curiosity
Mhm.
space, and I
Yeah.
try and share that with my parents as well, because if we can get back into a curiosity space, we're more able to be in that curiosity space with our kids.
Mhm.
When our kids are tiny, we go, oh, wow, they're so into that bee that's on that flower. And yet we would just walk past and not think twice about it. And so we tend to a little bit when they're little, but then we get out of it again.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
disappears. Yeah.
Such a great point. Yeah.
It is. And I think it's keeping that child in us alive a bit, isn't it? We tend to put them away. We get to a certain age and we put our toys away. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And as I've got older, the more I'm going back to my child and picking her up and bringing her with me, because a lot of those things didn't happen for her. So I'm now letting her do that with me. And it's great. I know it sounds a little bit weird and but it worked because we
Yeah.
can leave our child behind a lot of it.
Yeah.
Particularly if we've had a rough childhood or a childhood where we've been pretty much on our own. It's all part of that healing process, isn't it, as well? I love your goat story. So can you talk about where that came from and why this particular goat has this name?
Yes, absolutely. So during the pandemic, I had just moved to North Carolina in the States and was looking for opportunities to do things outside. And I didn't know anything, didn't know anyone. And there was a farm not far away that had baby goats. And I'm like, okay, sign me up. So that is where I spent a lot of time during some of those down days within the pandemic. And they started an adopt a goat program. And you got to be notified when a mama goat was going into labor. You got to be there. You got to name the goat. And I signed up. And I like to say the rest was history. Little Scout was born. I got to be right there.
Why
And
did
it
you call him
not
Scout?
leading up to it, I had all these different names. And the day of looking at him, it just popped in my head. I'm like, there's this little spunky little goat that immediately was up wandering around, and Scout just came to me and it stuck. It has just been such a great name for him. And it was fun for me not knowing a whole lot about goats beforehand. So getting to grow up in a sense, my knowledge with Scout. And what I realized very early on, they are very much like kids, very curious, very mischievous, always into something that they're trying to figure out what's going on, always trying to make friends and interested in snacks and all over the place and very creative. And it did not take long for me to look at Scout and go, you remind me of a child. And
It's funny that
so
they're
many
called kids too, isn't it?
exactly, yes. Yeah, and there were so many great connection points of just he would get out of his pen and go see some friends, and he just wanted to see what was next door, or he was curious about the snack that someone had or would hop in the back of the truck and make his way down the driveway, and so there were so many of these great moments. Scout has given me so much great content to write about because it's so relatable. I find that you've got this goat, and yes, it's an animal, but it is very much like a child. It is curious and it has feelings and emotions and wants to explore and try new things and see what happens, but also needs to have an adult type figure that is looking after him and making sure that he's getting home, that he is always safe. And so all the books have two characters that are these parent types. One is named Pickles. He is an older, scruffy goat who is the voice of reason. And then you have Luna, who is the shepherd dog who doesn't say anything, but always keeps a watchful eye on Scout. So she's always off to the side in a scene or kind of always corralling him, or when there's one scene where he realizes that he's by himself and he starts to feel a little bit nervous and afraid, realizes that he's not sure where he is, and then there's Luna to help usher him back to where he needs to go. And so I think it also shows a great way that it's not just parents, there are adults, there are people in our lives for the kids that are there to protect them and keep them safe. And so that can look at, when you think about blended families, adult can be all different types. And in these books, it's not just the mama goat and the daddy goat. There, it's a good old friend and a sheepdog that help take care of Scout and make sure that he is always safe.
Yeah, and it's important that there are people in our world as children that have been the quieter protectors, who are on the peripheral, if you like. I see myself like that, bit like that as a grandparent.
Mhm.
I'm leaning more towards Luna, right? And it's a really gorgeous picture in my head already of that sort of thing. It's like that gentle pull back in, let out
Mhm.
again, but also that
Yes.
ability to just go and explore.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah,
And
exactly. And yeah, and kids getting to learn boundaries and what happens when you start exploring them. Yes, is exciting. Yes, you can learn new things. You also have to be aware because there is cause and effect. And so again, it's just gentle ways to start those kind of conversations about scenarios that kids can find themselves in.
yes, which group books are more popular? Is it the Pumpkin or is it Scout, or maybe it isn't
Eh,
either?
I would say both of them for different reasons.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The Bumpy Pumpkin really resonates. I was the kid that had glasses or freckles, or I was the kid that looked different. And so they relate to the Bumpy Pumpkin. And it's interesting that this children's book gives adults a moment to pause and reflect and appreciate themselves, and how self-doubt and being self-conscious doesn't just stop when you were younger. It carries on throughout your life. And so the Bumpy Pumpkin is really just a message for everyone about loving yourself, embracing yourself, and really celebrating that we are all different. And then the goat books have a just kind of fun adventure way for kids to ask questions and explore. And so each one has a different kind of, I would say, target audience in a sense of what they're getting out of it and the messaging and why they keep coming back to them.
Yeah. So you've always loved books. You're writing books now. What's next? Have you got any other little special person or thing that's coming through that? Because these books are
Yes.
not necessarily, are they an age group books, these ones?
3 to 8 is
Okay.
what we typically say, great for story time, but also those early readers who are starting to pick up on words and form sentences. And I will say there will be more Scout books for sure, but my next book that I'm currently working on with a beautiful illustrator is about different types of families. So I come from a very blended family. My mom was a single mom for several years before she married my stepdad, who essentially raised me. And I come from a lot of divorce and just different dynamics. So I had this idea in my head of talking about different types of families, celebrating different types of families, but not doing it with people, doing it with animals. And so you've got a daddy bear and a cub bear, and it's just the two of them. Or you've got two lion moms and their cubs. Or you've got different types of animals. You've got a hippo and another animal combination, just to highlight blended families, adoption, fostering, step families. And so I'm super excited about this rhyming book because, again, it reminds me so much of my own childhood and the dynamics I grew up in, and just a way to say families can look like so many different things. There is not just one way. And I think, especially nowadays, I think if a kid is surrounded by love, is a family in and of itself. And so I'm super excited about this one because I think it really touches on the fact that families don't look like they did 50 years ago. And I think that's a great thing. I think it's more opportunity to experience love and support because we're now finding the opportunity to really support kids in many different ways. And it doesn't have to look the same, which is wonderful. And I think kids need to recognize that just because their family may be different than someone else's, they're still the heart of the family. They're still loved. It is still support. So that will be the next kind of story that's going to be coming.
Yeah, that sounds great. I know that you can feel the love and support inside a family yourself, but if it is different and you go out, if others are not understanding that that's okay, it can be very hard for a child. And I know back in the day when my parents separated, it wasn't common. And so you almost were labeled differently.
Sure.
It would not have been said or anything, but it's almost like it was a failure of some sort. And I am so thrilled now that we are starting to take this a lot more seriously, that the emotional impact this has on children, not just the fact that it's happened, but all that other stuff that, like the stone in the pond, you know, how it ripples out,
Yes. Yeah.
which is how it works, isn't it? That's how it
Yes.
works.
Yes.
So with your co-parenting in your real life, the books that you've done, have they been partly to share with those children, or have they been instrumental in almost being your editors to see whether that's been, positive?
Yes. Yes. They are what we call my advanced reader groups. I take story ideas, talk it through, and they're great. The 6-year-old will be like, that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, okay, tell me, because my adult brain is making sense of it. But to a child, it is not interpreting in the same way. And then you've got the 9-year-old who's, oh, I would say it this way. So it has been a great way to take the stories and ideas and find how are they really going to be received by a kid? Because I've just got my adult brain. And so it's helpful to have both adults read the books, but also the kids, and to give perspectives. And the books have little nods to them, which is fun, the
Yeah.
little names and things like that. But it's been great to get their perspective, and they're brutally honest, which is wonderful.
That's
They're
what
great.
the kids are brutally honest, aren't
Yeah.
they? Okay.
Yeah.
Again, that gets knocked out of us a bit as well, which is a bit of a shame because
Yes. Yeah.
I think that I love that nah, I'm not, that's not going to happen. I'm not doing it that way. I love it.
Yeah.
when
And they
talk.
just say what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And what I could do is just stop there, but then I ask questions because I want to
Yes.
understand what they're thinking in those moments and how does that translate to them, so that then I can make sure the illustrations display that, or the words fitted, so that it's more congruent and a cohesive piece.
Yeah.
Because I got the kids to say, okay, this is what makes sense to us.
Yeah. You've got your own publishing business company.
Yeah.
Why did you do that? Was there not anywhere you could take your books to and get published, or how did that come about?
That is a wonderful question. And so starting out in this author world, you don't know what you don't know. I just dove right in, said I'll figure it out. But one thing I did learn from working with some wonderful mentors and experts is that there are different paths you can go as an author, and each one comes with their own challenges. And so being traditionally published has both positives and negatives. And one of them is control of over your own work.
Yeah.
And so control of your words, your artwork, what happens to your books. And so I thought, let me just try this on my own. And as I started in the process, I was like, let me just create something, a full brand underneath my name that will then really give me total control. And I think it gave me a better sense of responsibility too, of like, okay, I am only going to be as successful as I want to be because it's me.
Yeah.
And I think too, with traditional publishing, it works in a different way. There's different offers that they have, different assets, and doing indie publishing, again, it just looks a bit different, and you don't have so much red tape, so to speak, and
Yeah.
it's really just doing what works best for me. And a lot of it is trial and error, and being my own publishing company, I get to do that, and it's just impacting me.
Yeah.
And so I get to really fine tune how I do things in the process. And one thing I've learned about writing, it's just the writing is the easy part. It's everything that comes after. So it's the publishing, it's the marketing, it's everything. And so it's been a safe space for me to grow and learn that on my own time versus kind of being on someone else's timeline. Plus, working with a traditional publisher can be really challenging to get those opportunities. And so self-publishing gives you a very quick way to get your books out,
Yeah.
again, without so much kind of red tape. And so for me, it just was something that made sense and has really worked.
Yeah. So where do you want that to go? Are you thinking of opening up to other authors, or are you wanting to keep it to yourself? How do you want to see that?
Yeah, I have actually started to work with other authors, and it's just
Awesome.
been natural. People said, "Oh, I've been wanting to do this." I'm like, "Let's do it. I am happy to help." I 100% get that feeling of, gosh, I've been wanting to do this, but I'm putting it off, or there'll be another time, or when I have money, let's do it together now. And so being able to share the knowledge that when I've learned through research and also working with some wonderful mentors. So yeah, definitely working with some authors who are starting to get their words on pages, starting to get them illustrated and then publishing under the Horseman Publishing name as well. And then just expanding from there, just seeing where it goes.
Great. That's really great, because I know it's a bit of a minefield trying to get a book out there on a lot of levels.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, and I would say for anyone who's thinking about it, one of the most streamlined, quickest ways is to self-publish yourself. And it does, you need to understand the process and know what is involved, but it's a more streamlined, easier process to publish on your own. Yeah.
Okay, we're getting towards the end of our time.
Yeah.
What's let's go back to your stories and all of those amazing reasons why we do what we do with storybooks with children. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned out of doing this over the period of time? What's been the best thing that's come out of this for you?
The best thing has been, and I remember it just like it was yesterday, a grandmother who I was at an event who bought my book. She's like, "Oh, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter. She would love this book." She bought the Bumpy Pumpkin. Her family was there. They went off. They sat down and read the book, and then she came back to me with just this wonderful smile and tears in her eyes, and she said, "I just had the best time. We just sat down, we read, she loved it, we talked about it. Thank you for giving us this moment." And I was like, "Oh, that's why I did it. If nothing else happens with any of the books, this was the exact moment," because that's what I remember growing up. Those are the moments I have. And so to know that both the child and the adult had that experience and just loved everything about it, and that time together, it was the two of them. Oh, God, yeah, it totally warms my heart every time I think about it. So that's my
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. And there are lots of those little magic moments when you read with children.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's lovely to be in the moment and just try and hold those instead of just, okay, that's it, time for bed, turn the light off. Let's try and go back to that space if we are sharing a book with a little one where we are there with them, right there with them. We've turned off as well. We're involved in it. and it's a real moment of time.
Yes.
Because they are
Yes.
magic.
It helps us to be present, and that is so hard. It is so very hard. And so to be present and connected with a kid, you're both on the same page, you're both
Literally.
in that moment together. It's hard. And books, stories can create that moment for us.
Yeah. I know my 9-year-old knows the book inside out, upside down. He's got a favourite. And his mum does too. She can do it with her eyes shut, but they still get the book out. But it's almost like they sing through the book now because they both know the words so well. But that's a great thing. If you've got a favourite book, that's a wonderful memory. And memories are what gives us our purpose in our life. They're the stuff you go back to when things are tough.
Yes.
Those really good, solid, hang on moment memories. I think I've asked all the questions I wanted to ask you, but it's okay.
Yes.
Where can people get hold of your lovely books about Scout and the Bumpy Pumpkin?
Yes. Yeah. So my website is just nataliehorseman.com. The books are also on Amazon. And yeah, there's lots of great pictures of the real Scout and funny videos. Again, he's the one that you never know where he is. He's always out of his pen, always in trouble. Literally, good on the go came to me right away because it made sense. He is always the one on the go. So yeah, there's lots of fun pictures in the behind the scenes of little Scout and his adventures.
Do you actually have Scout in your own backyard, or is he still back at the
No.
farm with the others?
He is at the farm, and that's probably the number one question I get is, does he live with you? He is at a farm that is like 15 minutes away.
Yeah.
So I get to go and enjoy him and help take care of him, but he gets to stay on a farm, which is the best place for him to be with all of his friends.
Oh.
But yeah, so it's wonderful to be, and it's such a relaxing place to go, to be outside, to be in the sunshine, to be around the animals. It does so much to make a crazy day feel so much better.
And he recognizes you when you come up, does he?
Yes. I didn't know that they could. He recognizes his name, and I'll come up and he just comes running, or he'll be eating and I'll be like, "Hey, Scout." And he turns around and here he comes.
Oh,
He probably wants the treats that I have, but he still recognizes his name. They love belly rubs. They're really funny, very quirky personalities, very entertaining.
yeah, goats are a very special animal, and I think we've always underestimated goats a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very smart.
Yeah.
Very smart. Creative.
Yeah. A bit like our kids. And I wonder whether that's
Yes.
the serendipity of it, where they're called kids as well.
Kids as well.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a lot of similarities. Absolutely.
Natalie, it's been great. I've loved having this conversation with
thank
you. And I do, yeah, you're welcome. And I do hope that any of our parents who are listening to Parent Connect, this podcast, can have had a few smiles throughout this chat. They can see themselves or their kids in amongst the goats or the bumpy pumpkins. And all of the information for Natalie's books and things I'll put at the bottom of the podcast. So I'll put the website, that kind of thing, so that any one of you who are watching it or even on YouTube, you know where to go. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I wanted to have this chat with you because parents are really struggling emotionally, as I said earlier. And this is just a lovely way to reframe it and perhaps have a rethink about that whole idea of rescuing and overdoing and over-explaining, that we really don't need to go there with our kids. We need to let them experiment, feel, and go into those spaces that we want to protect them from, because Scout the goat, they've got to learn to stand on their own 4 feet or 2 feet.
Yes.
And be able to live their life fully. We want our kids to grow up into really capable adults, and that's what we need to remember. They're not going to be kids forever.
Correct. Yeah.
listen
And
to
we
me.
want to set them up for success.
Yeah.
And that means that there's a little bit of trial and error, and that
There
they
is.
need to experience things themselves. Yeah.
And I love that whole pivot thing. I think that's such an important thing to learn. And I think this is something I deal with my parents too. You need to pivot. You need to go, it's okay. It doesn't matter if I don't do it now. It's okay.
Yeah.
You can stop. So anyway, thank you so much, Natalie. To all my lovely parents who are listening, thanks again for listening to a Parent Connect podcast and another really good, juicy little story just to show that out there in the real world, parenting is not always easy, but it can have its moments of fun. And part of that is sharing books with our children. So when you want to go down that road with a book, remember Bumpy Pumpkin or Scout the Naughty Goat or the Good Goat or the Funny Goat or the Exploring Goat. And remember, Natalie's got those lovely books going on Amazon and through Horseman Publishing. Thanks again, Natalie. And I look forward to seeing all my lovely parents again on another podcast where I'm going to explore some stories with some more wonderful ladies in our world. Thank you again.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Parenting Unfiltered with Jennifer Morrison. Jennifer is a parent coach dedicated to creating a supportive space for parents, carers, and professionals. To learn more, connect with Jennifer or explore coaching opportunities by following the links in the show notes. Join us again next time for another unfiltered conversation, because parenting isn't perfect, and here it's unfiltered.